Good afternoon, everybody. And hey, it's the big baby. And I'm back. Got a little midweek podcast for you. A little Wednesday flavor for you. I hope you all enjoy that. Ooh, get the light out the way. Lord have mercy. Oh, damn, now y'all gotta be able to see me. But anyways, so I hope you all had a great Juneteenth weekend. I hope those of you who have never celebrated before celebrated it. I hope those of you who were unfamiliar with the holiday learned, and I hope that we got closer to creating a better space for all Americans. And in that, I attended a couple of Juneteenth events, and it was interesting to see the different people out there and the different perspectives that you could receive from a Juneteenth event. And I went to an event, and I took part in an event in Carmel by the Sea here in the greater Monterey area. It's a very, let's just say it's a bougie white area. And blackness was brought there. And I think it's important that we get comfortable having uncomfortable conversations. Because at the event, I conducted some interviews with people, and we had some good discourse. But one of the biggest takeaways was there are a lot of people who care, but they don't get it. In order for these people to get it, we have to have a conversation. We can't always just talk at one another. And we can't always, just cut off other people when they want to give their perspective. Because in order for this to happen the way we want it, for us to make America the beautiful nation that we want it to be, we have to understand both sides in order to find common ground. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to have a conversation with this guy named Drew. I personally don't know Drew, but he's a good friend of Todd. And they both attended Tennessee State together. And I've heard stories about him from Todd. So I have an understanding of the type of person that he is. And we're going to sit down here and have a good conversation, a tough conversation, so that we can understand one another's perspectives. But more importantly, we can create a space that makes our country better. So, hey, welcome to the show, Drew. How you doing?
I'm going well, man. How are you?
I can't complain. First things first, I want to thank you for reaching out, and I'm happy to have you here on the show. But for my viewers who don't know you, can you just give a little background of who you are?
Yeah, definitely. I'll try and keep it brief. I'm originally from Memphis, Tennessee. I grew up in Memphis. I lived there until I was about 20. Left Memphis, and I have actually not been back as far as living and stuff like that. My background. Really, I grew up in a household that was, my dad, his side of the family. I mean, they're not technically affiliated with any clan or any sort of actual like technical affiliation with a racist movement, but they share the same sentiments. Racism was, it was rampant in my household growing up with my dad. My mom's side of the family, completely different. But my dad's side, who I grew up with, that's really what I grew up with, the ideals I grew up with. So I just kind of have spent the rest of my life sort of, navigating through the trauma that was kind of inflicted on me, because it was a very abusive household as well. So there's a lot of different sort of traumas that hit me as a kid. And so I've kind of live my life in a way that I can sort of, hopefully work through those traumas and sort of reverse kind of the way I look at it as what happened to me growing up. So that's really where I'm at today. So, yeah.
Okay, great. So how do you go from a racist household to a HBCU?
Man, I'm going to be really honest with you. One of the kind of ironies of growing up with my dad is that he gave me a good education in terms of sending me to schools that gave me the ability or helped my ability to critically think about things. And I think in the end, that was probably the undoing of everything. I question a lot of things, and I even as a kid, I would question everything. I'm just a really, really consistently curious person. And so the older I got, I growing up in Memphis, it's 70% black, right? So, I mean, let's just, I grew up initially in the south part of Memphis. So it's a very, very poor part. Everyone I knew was black. Every single person I knew was black. All my friends were black. So when he started hitting me with this racism and stuff when I was younger, it really didn't, I'm not going to say it didn't take hold, because you want to be like your dad and all this stuff, but like, I don't think it had as much of an effect as he thought it was ever going to, because I grew up in a black city. I grew up in black culture. All my friends were black. The music that I listened to was black influence. There were a lot of Afrocentric things that I had already kind of had in my life that that I associated with positivity. So I think it was really just my situation growing up geographically helped me, because I was really able to kind of see the positivity that black culture brought. So I think the hooks that he tried to put in me just didn't really ever have an opportunity to sink in. So I've just worked since then and doing what I can to sort of reverse what they are putting out into the world, if that makes sense. So
it makes absolute sense. And I think that's a great point to make, that human interaction takes away a lot of our hate. It's really hard to get to know a person or get to know a group of people and still hate them. You cannot like them. You cannot want to be around them, but it's really hard to hate someone once you get to know them.
Yep.
So one of the big things that I've learned in my experience is that whether it's any type of bigotry, right? Whether it's race-based bigotry, whether it's gender-based bigotry, sex-based bigotry, any of that, right? A lot of it comes from a lack of exposure and true human interaction with the people that you quote unquote hate.
Yep.
So I just think that's dope. And if you don't mind me asking, how is your relationship with your dad and that side of the family today?
Oh, it's been non-existent for over 15 years now. I spoke to him last, I'm 40 now. I turned 41 in July. I last spoke to him, I'm pretty sure I was 23. I sent him an email and just said, I don't really ever wish to speak to any of y'all ever again. And that was me kind of just letting all that go. So it's literally non-existent. So my brother, my stepmom, my grandparent, my aunts, uncle, like, I don't speak to any of them. So yeah.
Fair enough. So where are you at now?
I'm in like located.
Yeah, physically. Yeah.
I'm in Los Angeles, California now. So yep.
How you liking it in LA?
I like it. I had a huge advantage coming out here. My girlfriend she's from LA originally.
Yeah.
So I came out here with someone who's familiar with the city and kind of helped me navigate things early on. So I was at a huge advantage coming out here. But yeah, man, I like it. It's I'm in a good spot. I no complaints really. I mean, California's awesome. They gave me free healthcare, so I can't complain. Yeah, but yeah, man.
Yeah, it's like my 5th year in California, and I'm up Monterey area right now, and spent some time in Southern California, and it's just beautiful out here.
Yeah, Monterey's ridiculous. I love that. I love that entire area. So if it was more doable for me, I'd definitely move up there for sure. So
you're not missing much unless you're in the views. It's
exactly
beautiful out here, but it's not much to do.
I got
you. Let's just get into it though.
Yeah.
You reached out to me a day or two ago, and what got the wheels rolling?
All right. So I saw is his name is it Moshe? Is that
Moshe?
Moshe. Okay. So I saw part of the interview where Moshe was talking about how every 4 years it seems we get this perpetual cycle of Democratic politicians pandering to blacks, and I absolutely cannot disagree with that. There's absolute pandering, because Democrats know without the black vote they're toast, and I think that most people who vote Democrat understand that as well. And I guess what I and I'm not saying I'm absolutely not saying that he was the one that is pushing this sentiment, but what I've seen that sort of sentiment taken to the extreme in especially in the time that Trump got elected, right before he got elected, up until now. There's really been this narrative that Democrats and Republicans are basically the same. That they that neither party has anyone's interest in mind. They're looking to get their rich friends, paid and all this other stuff. And I again, I don't want to invalidate that feeling that people have within themselves, if that's their opinion. But what the fear that I have with that sentiment is that I'm starting to see it spread more on social media. I'm starting to see more people sort of buy into that line of thinking that Democrats and Republicans are essentially the same party. And I guess what I've been trying to do lately, mostly through social media and texting and phone calls, stuff like that, I try to make it more personal interactions, is just try and help people understand that while there are plenty of Democrats that I have a problem with, Joe Biden being one of them, they're definitely not the same party. They're absolutely not even close to the same party in terms of having the majority of people's well-being in mind. And again, I want to be real clear in saying that I don't think that Moshe was pitching that particular line. Mm-hmm. I just think that with what he was saying, I think that you start to, like, anywhere going past that, I feel like you start to get towards towing that line a little bit and starting to give people the impression that overall Democrats or the Democratic Party or liberals in general do not care about Black people. And I think that's I think that there are ways that you can demonstrate that has been the case in the past, for sure, no doubt. And there's absolutely no doubt about that. But I think that the more we see a younger generation come out to vote, I think the more we see African Americans themselves getting involved in the vote, as you see those percentages start to climb up, you're going to start to see a Democratic Party that starts to resemble folks who more have your interests at heart. If all of this if I'm making sense there.
Oh, so, no, you're making perfect sense here.
Yeah.
And here's what I think. I think that the party itself does what the loud voices in the party project. And I think that one of the biggest problems in the Black community is that and not just the Black community, just society as a whole, is that we are apathetic. And you speak about social media. Social media is very loud when it comes to what they think and what they say, but a lot of social media does not follow that up by actual engagement with politicians. They're not attending town halls. They're not writing letters. They're just tweeting or making Instagram posts. So here's my issue, though, is that a lot of people in the Black community don't have time to be politically engaged. If you're trying to figure out how to feed your family, how to take care of the home front, you don't have time for political engagement. So you want to trust that the people you put in office will have your best interest at heart, because that's what they tell you. But time and time again, we get some lip service, or we get what I've been calling cracker crumbs, right? But we're not getting a meal. So another friend of mine always says it's two wings of the same bird.
Sure.
So I kind of fall where you fall, because I have distrust for federal politics because of the poli-sci major and did my thesis on Citizens United, right?
Sure. Okay.
And how that ruined politics on both sides.
It's a joke.
Yes, but I also think that as people, we are entirely too bound to a party and not a group of principles, and the polarization of the parties. And I'll just take it back to Newt Gingrich and how he just drove home the importance of conservatism and keeping the conservative party strong, keeping the Republican Party strong, and that started the erosion of bipartisan politics. Sure. And that's just now reflected itself in today. And we see this whole, you're with me or against me. And it's like, no. It's not black or white. There's an area, a shade of gray. And I think we're losing gray area in society. And I think that's what we got to look for, gray area, and looking for a third party. And Tyler Blackman, I know you're in the comments, and don't talk to me about that Libertarian Party. It has to be a moderate party that is created from the grassroots.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. In fact, I would argue that we need more than 3 parties, because I don't even know how you'd fit. We have 345 million people, something like that, in this country now. I mean, you can't. I think if we had 30 parties, it still wouldn't be enough. If you're talking about true parties that had representatives that truly represented, people's majority of interest, right? You're never going to find a candidate, right, that checks off 100 out of 100 boxes. But I guess so going back to when you said Newt Gingrich is starting that polarization. And by causing that polarization, you cause this gray area in the middle. And I absolutely agree with you that causes those on the left who are more progressive, who I consider myself, it causes us absolutely to go more left. However, I would also argue that I could show you studies and data and statistics and things that back up what my vision for America. I consider myself almost socialist, right? I consider myself an extreme anti-racist, like an extremist, like in fact, I don't even know if anti-racist even goes, because I consider racism an ideal, and I think that people take action based on those ideals, the ideals of racism. I don't think that racism is some sentient thing that goes out and harasses people. You know what I'm saying? It's an idea. So for me, it's more about understanding that when you talk about that gray area in the middle, the gray area that's coming from the GOP and those on the right is gray area that's formed out of hate and policies that are very, very specifically designed to hold people back and to not progress. And so I find this difficult for me to especially have these conversations with African Americans who have such a distrust of the government to begin with, and do have such a distrust of both parties, because I do agree Democrats have not even come close to doing what they should for African Americans when they had the opportunity. But I think that when they have to spend so much of their legislative process fighting against these people on the other side, I'm trying to be nice here, but like when you're fighting against these people on the other side, when you're spending all your time doing that, like you said, it's kind of like for an African American family, when you're spending all your time having to worry about feeding your kids, or feeding or what college your kids are going to go to, or save, or just even just paying bills, much less saving up and stuff like that. It's hard to really focus on things like voting. It's hard to focus on things that would actually, make substantial change if the political process worked properly. And I feel like I'm kind of rambling here, but at the same time, I just think that it's so important to understand the difference between the two parties, and to understand that even though the Democratic Party is far from perfect, they are not even close to where I want them to be. They absolutely present the most opportunity to move to a place where we would all be better off. If that's my position, I guess.
Yes, I agree for the most part with that. And one issue I see within the Democrat Party, and you go back to there needing to be multiple parties, is there are too many different points of view that compete against one another within the party, which stops the party from progressing forward, because you spend half your time infighting, another 35% of your time fighting against the GOP, and then now you got 15% of your time to actually do your job. Yep. And the one thing about the GOP, whether or not I'm not saying that they don't have infighting, but at the end of the day, you will see that they will fall in line to their own, to the detriment of our people, in order to push their own agenda. And Bill Maher talks about it all the time. We need more progressives who can understand sometimes you have to swallow your own pride for the betterment of the party. But I want to go back to your distrust of the government piece, right? And I'm Black, and if you tell me you distrust the government, I have no issue with it. But what I say is that we have, as people, we have to stop putting our trust in the government and looking at the government to solve our problems. We have to look in our communities, especially if you're going to look at government, look at your local government, look at your state government, look at those government entities to actually address your needs, because we forget about local politics and we get so caught up on what Congress is doing, what the president is doing, what the Supreme Court is doing. Do these things affect us? Yeah, a little bit. But the day-to-day things that affect you, the money that's going to the schools that your kids are going to go to, the roads that you're in, cleaning up your neighborhoods, all of that stuff can be affected in your hometown, in your local government. And people just ignore local government. They don't look at the different initiatives. They don't take the opportunity to go, hey, I live 10 minutes away from City Hall. Guess what the hell I can do? I can just pull up to City Hall and say, hey, I want to talk to somebody. I can pull up to a city council meeting. I can go to a school board meeting. But we don't do that, and we get caught up into the news cycle, because the 24-hour news cycle is one of the worst things that's happened. And another issue that we have is most of these news shows are not news. They are opinion shows, and they play at prime time, so people believe they're watching news when no, this is entertainment. What's his name? What's his bow tie?
Tucker Carlson.
He's not a journalist. He's an opinionist.
In fact, I wish I were making this up. This is how sad Fox News is. The attorneys for Fox News in a lawsuit, I'm not joking. You can Google it. Like 3 days ago, just argued in court that because it's a defamation suit. He said some shit about some guy, and so he's being sued for that now. His lawyers argued in court that Tucker's audience does not expect him to bring them facts, nor should he be expected to bring his audience facts, because they are in fact an entertainment network, despite them being called Fox News. And I feel like that's literally just one example you can look that sums up Fox News as a whole. Our fans don't expect facts, and please don't expect us to deliver them. So, and there you go.
And that's just false, because their fans expect facts, because they take what their pundits say as fact. Because I've heard people quote them, but I like to listen to a little bit of Tucker. I like to listen to what's his name?
Chris, you talking about Chris or
no, little Hannity. There's only
oh gosh.
I like Chris Wallace. Chris Wallace is a solid conservative.
He's like the only legit one there. Yeah.
But I like to listen to them, because they will say something wild and then they will pose it as a question. So it's like, oh, I'm just asking a question. It gives them that plausible deniability, when it's like, I don't know. But let's get to a conversation that that you were having with Todd about the vaccine for COVID. I'm interested in your take on that.
Okay, so I'm a journalism major. Okay, I base pretty much my whole my whole philosophy on a lot of major things in my life are based around valuing the truth. Okay, I put a lot of value on what's true and what can be proven true. All right.
Okay.
So with that said, I have seen, and because I went to TSU, I'm connected through Instagram and every social media platform to a lot. I mean, just literally hundreds of African American folks' accounts, right? And so what I'm starting to see is a huge uptick in information regarding things like Bill Gates, the vaccine that's coming for COVID, that's allegedly coming to, hopefully by the end of the year, into 2021, things like that, starting to talk about how it's just going to be a government run thing for control, and it's basically a mind control operation, things like that I personally consider conspiracy theorist stuff. And I think it's obvious that the disconnect, for me, comes because I am a hetero, cis white man in America, and I don't have I don't have a history of trauma with the government, on a personal level. So I can't relate to, I can't personally relate to the distrust that Todd was talking about in the Black community. My point to Todd was that even though I can't personally relate to it, my entire point is that even though there is that distrust, I know that Black folks are smart enough to see through the bullshit. And if you don't mind me saying that,
no, speak freely.
And so, I see it as, I don't see it as Todd saying, we're just gonna not trust the government no matter what. But I just saw it. Again, it's difficult for me to talk. It's difficult for me as a white guy to tell a Black guy, hey, just trust the government on this, okay? Like, just trust them on this vaccine that I know in your past has been used against your people on a widespread basis. And so I feel like it's impossible for me to say that to Todd, because I know the history. I know about Tuskegee. I know all that stuff. And so I find it's difficult for me to balance, saying to him, hey, man, like, you got to be able to see through the BS here. And know that Bill Gates is not on some mission to have mind control over the Black population on Earth. It just doesn't work that way. You know what I mean? So that's really where I'm coming from, and I think that Todd was just really stuck on the position that the distrust level is so high that even if we know those facts, we're still not going to trust them. And so that's again, that's where I'm disconnected from that. And I fully admit so.
So here's one thing. I appreciate the honesty, and don't ever disqualify yourself from having a certain perspective, right? Because it is important for you to utilize your perspective and stand firm or be confident in your perspective, right? Because again, if you can't be confident in your perspective, we don't have an honest, tough conversation.
Right.
And I fall like you and I are so close on our belief of this, because I know about Tuskegee. I know historically what American medical practices have done to Black people, specifically Black women. Yep. So do I trust the first round of vaccines? No, and that's not even because I'm Black. That's just like when the new iPhone drops, you don't get the first ones that come out.
I got you.
The PS5 that's about to come out, I don't want the first crop. I'm gonna wait 6 months to a year before I get it, because it's like, we gotta get the bugs worked out, right? So the Melinda Gates quote that I'm pretty sure sparked this conversation was saying that, hey, this needs to go to Black people first. You look at the numbers, that makes sense.
Yep.
But then it's like, hold on, I don't want to be your test dummy because of Tuskegee. But also, I don't want to be your test dummy because this shit might not work. Like you can work out on all the rats you want. You can, but I don't trust that this vaccine is going to work. And it also doesn't help that we have a growing belief that vaccines, period, don't work. We have people who don't want to vaccinate their kids. People who think vaccines cause autism. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
a lot of the stuff they put in those vaccines that are not good for you. And again, I believe, like looking at the comment, I believe that there are issues with vaccines, but there's a reason why polio doesn't exist anymore.
Exactly.
There's a reason why we were all vaccinated as youth, and those diseases are not an issue in this country.
Yep.
But I also think just COVID itself, and because it's new, we don't know, it's overblown. And I don't want to come off as insensitive to people who have lost people to COVID, but there are things that have kill people more at a higher rate than COVID-19 has. And I think we have to keep that in context, right? Again, we don't know how bad COVID's going to be, but we have to keep that in context. But I do believe once there is a vaccine, right? Once we know what COVID is and what it looks like, and again, it's going to take years to figure this out. But I think once we get to that point, then I am all for a vaccine. But if you want me to be one of the first 10,000 that you I'm gonna pass on that one. I'm gonna roll the dice.
Yeah, when I step back from that conversation for a little while, after Todd and I, and I think the number one mistake we made was we were texting, and that it's just not it's gonna be a struggle to come to a resolution on anything, regardless of what that looks like, through texting, because you can't hear tone, it's just not good. And so once I stepped back, I reread it a couple times, and I saw that he really was very specific in saying, it's not that I'm 100% distrusting, it's just that there is no way in hell I'm going to be the first two, because I explained to him what that quote, when it said technically she said it's going to be medical workers first. She didn't even say African Americans first. It was medical workers first. Like, we're going to get them because they're the most exposed. So basically, point being, I went back and read it and could tell that he was saying, what he really was saying is that I'm not going to not take this vaccine. It's just that there's no way, my level of trust in the government is not even close to the level that it should be for me to be in the first 2, 3, 4, 5 rounds of giving this out. There's no way. That he just wants to see that it works. And I think I was more upset that he shared like a misquote than his position on the thing.
And there goes your journalism background. And I think that's one thing that's scary about social media is oftentimes we can share a quote or we can share a misquote, but the most important thing is the context of the quote, because you need context. But there are some who think that Bill and Melinda Gates are caught up in that Epstein ring. And have you heard any of these crazy conspiracy theories?
I not only have I heard them, I can. I mean, I can't do it over video. I could send you text. Not only have I heard of them, I could send you articles and links and stuff that will show you exactly where those rumors came out of in Russia. It's all stuff that started out of a place called the Internet Research Agency in Moscow, and it's very, very, very specifically the angle you just talked about with Bill and Melinda Gates. It's and the whole autism thing, the vaccines, the whole anti-vax movement. I'm not saying every single bit of disinformation on the internet is Russian, but those two specific ones absolutely have been spread like wildfire. On Twitter, I have a Twitter account that I don't really tell people about. I just use it to kind of track stuff like this, because I follow a lot of data analysts and stuff that literally can trace where it's coming from. and it's absolutely frightening the amount of disinformation that Russia is pumping out towards, like, very specifically towards African American communities. You'll see groups on Facebook like, Black Lives Matter is awesome, and you think, oh man, I'm going to join that. Boom, click, and it's absolutely like anti-Biden, anti-Bernie, anti-DNC. It's just total propaganda that's being put. You know what I mean? So I just, when I see stuff like that online, like the misquotes, the false information, as a journalist who really pays attention to a lot of that stuff in detail, I see it, and I absolutely, it triggers kind of a response in me where, and knowing Todd with a journalism degree as well, that's what I specifically said to him, in fact, was that, like, I consider you a journalist, so I consider you to be a little bit above posting misquotes from Melinda Gates, like, I don't know. It's just, that's kind of where it stemmed from.
Okay, so y'all are having a two-sided argument that y'all probably shouldn't be having in the text at all. So,
exactly.
So to get back to some of the conspiracy things, right? Because I have somebody who I talk to who's kind of on the conspiracy side of the house, sure. And I think we all should have a healthy level of cynicism. We should question a lot of stuff, and there's nothing wrong with believing that some conspiracy theories are true, right? I don't know to what degree you want to accept them, but I think strings are pulled in certain situations. But when I got into some of some of those stuff we're talking about with the Bill and Melinda Gates, trying to link them to the Epstein ring and Hillary Clinton stuff, when I look that stuff up, it doesn't pop up on the first 2 pages of Google. I go, okay, I'm done here. Like, and that may be my ignorance, but it's like, if this is credible information, I should be able to easily access it. But then the counter argument to that is, well, the reason why you can't easily access it because it's credible information and they don't want you to know. So I find myself in a place of, well, what can I do about it, and how much energy can I put into this stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Have you ever heard of Bernalini's principle? You ever heard of this?
Who?
Bernalini he's an Italian data guy. He has this thing that he came up with. It was around 2013, I believe. It's called the bullshit asymmetry principle, or Bernalini's principle. And what it says is, the basic premise of it is, I don't want to even try and quote it exactly because I'll get it wrong, but the basic principle of it is that it's easy for me to come out and just say a lie. I can just come out. I'm the Attorney General of the United States. That dude lies all the time. Every time he opens his fucking mouth, he's lying, right? So, and it takes almost zero energy for him to get up to a podium and just open his mouth and lie, take no questions, and then walk away. Now, to disprove those lies, however, it's going to take a journalist calling somebody, do an interview. So basically what this principle says is that when someone spews out bullshit or lies, the energy and time that it takes to disprove those bullshit and lies is magnitudes greater than it took to just say the lie. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. It's interesting. I was listening to Joe Budden's podcast this morning, and they were talking about the allegations against Justin Bieber. And then how Bieber came out, he had the receipts to prove that those women were wrong. And it's one of those things that I think there has to be stronger. There has to be stronger discipline against people who purposefully and knowingly spout lies that have a large impact on other people. Because again, they were using this as talking about false rape allegations. But if we know anything about a false rape allegation, and Me Too, don't cancel me, #not me, is that once that is out there, no matter what you do to disprove it, there will always be people who will believe that you did that, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And it's the same thing with these conspiracy theories. Once you put that energy out there and you put that doubt in someone's head, and it's easy to make points that support, make valid points that support a false conclusion. And at the end of the day, if you're just making people question their reality, that's all you need to say, oh, well, this might be valid. And I'm not one to stifle freedom of speech. You should be free to speak, but you should also be free to receive consequences for your speech.
Oh, I absolutely agree. In fact, I'm going to be really honest with you, man. I think that if anything, what this whole movement has taught, at least me personally, you go to Berlin, Germany, and you stand in a public square and start yelling about how you're denying the Holocaust, and watch what happens to you. Watch what happens to you in the first 2 minutes of you trying to do that. They will haul your ass to jail for doing that in 2 seconds, because it's considered such an embarrassment and such a bad mark on their history that they're ashamed. Basically, my point is, Germany has decided to take a stand and say that we have this particular event that was so horrible in our history that we're literally going to start prosecuting people if you even think about bringing this crap back up again in a way that tries to get an uprising. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, they have rules. You can speak freely in Germany. They don't. They do have free speech, but you can't go in a public square and start throwing up Hitler signs. You can't do that. And so I agree with you in a sense that I think that we do need harsher repercussions for people who come forward and lie on purpose, and especially if that lie were to lead to someone else getting in trouble legally or however else. But especially for people who, like that Charlottesville rally where that poor girl got killed, the fact that those people were even allowed to do that, where we live in a society that says they have the freedom to do that, is to me it's a sign that we are a sick society.
There goes your socialist side coming out. But I'm not mad at you, but you talked about the stuff in Germany, and I applaud Germany for what they've done as far as their response as a nation to the Holocaust. And don't you just wish America could take the same approach? And people in America, because you've seen with the Bubba Wallace stuff, and I don't trust that. I don't trust the investigation that said it was just a rope that happened to be tied as in it was whatever BS. But the fact that there are people who can't admit that clinging to their Southern heritage and their flag and these monuments and memorials to people who committed blatant treason in the name of racism and maintaining slaves, the fact that we continue to glorify these people is so problematic. It's like we as a country cannot take a stand against the wrong things that we've done. And it's like, look, we're still America the Great. Okay, we're still a premier world superpower. But if we cannot admit that we are wrong, I have way more respect for a leader who will say, hey, man, I messed that one up, than someone who acts like they've done no wrong when it's obvious that they have made missteps. I see your question, Bender, and I'll get to it in a hot second. So we got this one question, Drew. How might the First Amendment be amended to address the difference between the technology now versus when it was written? You could lie back then, but the whole world couldn't hear it within seconds. However, now with the internet, censorship is terrifying. Historically, has never worked, at least to my knowledge. But what is the balance, or can there be a balance?
I mean, I absolutely think that's a great question. And I also think that an answer to this, as frustrating as this is going to sound to him, probably, is that I don't know. I know that I have my personal views on things just like everybody else. I'm not an expert, and I don't know enough about censorship history to comment on that particular part of it. I just, again, my personal philosophy is based on valuing truth. Okay, and if we can all come to an objective agreement that the truth of racism and hate speech, Confederate monument, things like that, that stand for values, again, that we all agree are antithetical to, to what we say we stand for, then I don't have a problem at least exploring the censorship of that sort of particular hate speech that we have, just like Germany has kind of done that. But I don't want to even come close to suggesting that I'm some sort of anti-free speech person. I just think that there are tangible repercussions for people who take that particular line of hate speech with racism and things like that. And it's just, at this point, I don't know what to do. So, yeah.
So I think one issue that we run into is that people don't understand the Constitution. People just don't. Like, they take lines and they quote them. And sure. I'm actually going to go deeper into that on the show I'm doing Saturday. We're going to talk about what about my rights? We're going to get into what some of your rights are and where that applies. But we're governed by a document that was ratified in 1783. And let me preface this by saying I am not saying that the Constitution should be ripped up and a new document should be written to govern this country. I will not say that on record. But it's hard. It's hard to take the ideals of the 1780s, just that time frame, and rationally and effectively apply them to situations today, because we are interpreting that document in our own view, right? We use Supreme Court cases and they again use their own interpretation, and we get to where we are now, and it's like, oh my goodness, I don't know what is right, because the document says this, but like never thought that what you say could go out to the entire world at the click of a button.
No.
You know, like even in the Second Amendment, again, not to give away my Saturday show, but like everybody says the Second Amendment gives me the right to bear arms. Yes, that is not the entire Second Amendment. You have to read out the entire Second Amendment. So it's and I am not anti-Second Amendment as we perceive it today. But
not either.
In my opinion, there needs to be some form of update to the way that we are governed, because we are looking at an outdated form of government. And not say outdated. Let me say we can't contextualize our society in a lot of the situations based on how we're governed. But I tell people all the time, the best written document ever is the American Constitution. Because if I say, hey, we should rip this up and create a new constitution, I am treasonous. If you want to ratify the Constitution, or excuse me, if you want to amend the Constitution, it's next to impossible. Like, if it's a damn near foolproof document, because it gives you hope that you can change it. But in practicality, you can't. So much respect to the founding fathers for making sure that their imprint lasts for the entirety of the country.
Yeah, they did a good job with locking that one down for sure. The Constitution needs to be changed. I mean, we desperately need some amendments for sure. Some things need to be updated. Like you said, it came out it was the 1700s, for God's sake. So, I mean, it's just I couldn't agree with you more on that at all. So, how we do that. I mean, like you said, I think goes back to. I think you got to start with local government, and you got to branch out there. I mean, it's important. It's always important to show up every 4 years, but it is so much more important to show up for local elections. It is, I wouldn't even be able to put a number on how many times more important it is to show up for local elections, because that's the vast majority of what affects you. Your bills, your bills are like your life. I mean, even just saying your bills, I mean, that's like your life. Whether, no matter what it's a bill for, daycare. I mean, they can help with setting all those rates and things. It's crazy. Rent, the utilities, all of that stuff that controls your life is all run by those local folks. So I think that's a message that that now that especially Black Lives Matter and the groups that are even kind of hoping to piggyback off of this movement that's going on now, I think it's something that it'll be a wasted opportunity if they don't start hammering home making a difference in local and having people like Todd run for local elections. I want to see people like Todd in office, and getting in there and literally making a difference in his community, things like that, and starting to encourage that type of stuff. That's really kind of what I'm focusing on now is getting more politically involved. So
that's beautiful. So as we get ready to wrap this up, one thing I want to just beat into the ground is it starts at home, and it begins with us educating ourselves in our houses. And then it starts with conversations amongst friends. And those conversations amongst friends spread into your immediate circles and your outside circles. Like this conversation happened because we have a mutual friend who we've had different conversations with. You shot me a message. It's like, okay, boom, let's have this public conversation for masses to hear. And then it starts within your neighborhoods and your communities and your local elections. But not only just waiting for election time, it's about being engaged as much as you possibly can. Again, I'm never going to tell you to put paying your bill, being engaged over paying your bills, because you got to pay your bills to survive. But when you can educate yourself on what's going on in your community, you should do that. And then attend town halls, attend city hall meetings. Make sure that you are making your presence felt. If you feel like you're not being heard, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And then take that same energy and expend it out to the state and then out to your federal officials. Because if we keep this energy locally and we allow it to spread, then we can create a government that actually governs the people and does not govern special interests.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also important to note that I feel like November is in November, this election, you'll hear in the media, this is the most important election in the United States. You hear that every election, every presidential election. But I think that this election, I think that you could legitimately say that. However, I think this election is more of a stepping stone for what's to come. I think this election is going to set the tone for exactly what you said, that the more we stay engaged in this movement and the more this movement keeps going and keeps momentum, the more we're going to start to see a government that is representative of what people actually want. If you look at polls of what people want in terms of Medicare, universal healthcare, things like that, people up to 70% of Americans want it. But then when it comes to the polls, no one votes for it because they get fed all this misinformation. So I think the more, like you said, the more we're engaged in local politics, not just on national level, and the more we show up and make your voice heard, the more you're going to have a government that represents literally that voice. So.
All right, Drew, this was great. I'm about to remove you, but don't log off yet because I want to just have a brief little conversation with you after I end the broadcast.
Perfect.
So I hope you all enjoyed that, man. It's just great to have people on to have tough conversations. Make sure you tune in on Saturday. I'll be on with Tyler, and we're going to talk about our rights and the Bill of Rights. Monday, I'm going to have my guy Josh Fowler on. We're going to do a Product of Proverbs Season 1 recap, and then we're going to talk about some different stuff that we want to see change locally in our community. Just understand that, hey, it starts within. It starts with you, but don't be afraid to have uncomfortable conversations. We have to get comfortable having these uncomfortable conversations in order to make change. So don't let this momentum that we have with the death of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, right? We don't want to just stop here. We want to use this energy like we have to push for Juneteenth, in creating history, learning our history and creating more opportunities for our people and advancement here in America, creating progress. We have to continue this push forward until we get what we deserve and what we want. So hope you all have a great day. Big Baby Ad!